Hey guys, what's up? It's Darkmech here and welcome back to another video. Today we are talking all about the scaling world and the aftermath that patch 7.3.5 has left on the community in regards to leveling. Now if you're an active forum user, you will no doubt have seen the many threads and posts relating to the leveling experience now that the scaling world change has been implemented. So this is something that I feel is worth talking about, and the aim today is to try and shed light to both sides of this argument, and I will of course, not being able to help myself, throw my 2 cents in there as well. So we're going to start off with the dungeon side of this topic and the changes. So pre-scaling world, you would get your heirlooms on, you would pull the entire dungeon, you would AoE it down, you would have fast-paced leveling with no open world issues. Post-scaling, however, you pull more than one pack, you fail to interrupt, you neglect mechanics, and your group will die. So the question that comes from this, is this bringing the challenge and teamwork required back to running dungeons via the leveling experience? Does this actually make dungeons whilst leveling engaging again? Is this forging you into a master of your class while you level and experience dungeon content? Are you learning skills that will actually aid you in max level content when you get there? Or is this just a huge waste of time because old content and leveling should be fast? So searching through the forums, I've tried to find fairly balanced viewpoints and arguments to both sides of these stories, so we can kind of go through them and then we can discuss them afterwards. So the first post that I've actually grabbed is from a player by the name of Kelrun, who started a rather large thread, and this was just the first post that kicked it off. So Kelrun says, among leveling in general, scaling has broken dungeons. I just tried to run Blood Maul slag mines and it was an absolute laugh factory. All 5 of us were decked out in heirloom gear and there were wipes on trash, not to mention the boss fights that lasted for 3 to 5 minutes and ended in wipes. This is not fun. I can understand introducing some challenges back into the leveling process, but wipes and 5-minute long boss fights should be reserved for max level. I'm not interested in spending 2 to 3 times the amount of time in content I've already done, unless of course that was your plan all along, Blizzard, to make it so infuriating and slow to level that we buy your $60 character boosts. I'll try and paraphrase these as much as I can rather than read them out as well, guys. Another user commented, Axebreaker, in reply to this, I managed to clear slag mines without too much trouble, 22 minutes for a clear. There are a lot of people, mostly tanks, who are going to need to adjust to the gameplay now, pulling one pack at a time, marking a skull target using LOS and interrupting. The dungeons aren't the problem, the player base is. One of the other posts on this one that I really liked was from Summer Rain. No, they just fixed dungeons. Dungeons were never meant to be a means of speed leveling where everyone just ran through killing everything in 1 second. The introduction of heirlooms trivialized dungeons to a ridiculous extent, and now they have been fixed. For those who don't know, dungeons used to be a challenge for a group of players to come together, work as a team, and heirlooms ruined that. And from the same thread, one of the other ones that I liked was, this is the basic problems with patch. I'm okay with the leveling changes, but dungeons have been ruined. They simply take too long and the bosses hit too hard. What's going to happen, of course, is that levelers will quit queuing for dungeons, which may be what Blizzard had in mind. So I could have read out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of posts around this topic in dungeons. However, they're all virtually saying the exact same thing. Now, I'll be completely honest, I don't really care. You know, my philosophy when I level is to stay out of dungeons anyway. I like to quest as fast as I can. Dungeons were always seen as the slower pathway to leveling, unless you're exploiting like the greatest paladin of all time, Athene in TBC, or maybe it was Wrath. I think it was TBC. But queuing into a dungeon over questing would certainly help break the monotony of questing, but a poor group would end up taking too much time up, ruin your XP per hour ratio, and if you're like me, you just wanted to get to max level. I also enjoyed actually seeing the new expansion and the new open world. However, there is the other side to this. You know, around dungeons being a challenge and forming a platform for player development, I don't actually think this is that bad. Dungeons never used to be, as Summerain said, a AoE festival of numbers. You know, you used to have to pull one pack at a time. You used to actually have to use your brain. You used to have to CC in some stages. And I know people are used to big pulls and heirlooms and, you know, one character that's decked out in heirlooms may be able to carry the entire dungeon, and if everyone wipes, they still survive, and so on and so on. But I don't actually think this was ever Blizzard's actually intended function for dungeon content. So is this such a bad change? You know, is this actually going to help fashion players into better Mythic Plus players and better max level content players? We always hear the argument over, you know, the better player base from vanilla because they know about mob awareness and interrupting and line of sighting and not running through things in dungeons because they're actually looking at, whereas maybe in the modern player base there isn't that awareness. People just run aimlessly through a dungeon even when they get to max level because they don't have that awareness. They haven't had to think about that as a process whilst leveling. So to be fair, I actually think this makes dungeons feel like dungeons again. You know, we had a really dynamic shift when heirlooms came in, where dungeons became this run through, grab everything and AoE it down. And now we're shifting maybe back towards where they used to be. So I actually think this is a good change. I certainly think to appease people, the reward for completing a dungeon could certainly be boosted. I saw a couple of good suggestions around even when you complete a dungeon, you get like a half an hour XP boost or something like that for your time in there. And I think that's a great idea, but I do always think that questing should be the quicker option because you're out experiencing the open world and the new game rather than stuck in an instant server with a select group of people just doing the same route and massive pulls and trying to speed level through that way. But that's just my opinion, of course. So moving away from the dungeon focused effect that the scaling world has had to a more general purpose leveling effect. So again, there's been loads of discussion around this topic. Is it the issue that people want to just fly through content because it's not a game until you hit max level? Are the quests and storylines just not enough to draw you into that experience? Does the change make it too hard for newly introduced players to WoW to actually get into this and to get to max level? Is it because the majority of the player base has already done level 1 to 60 so many times now it'll be boring no matter what? Or when the scaling world revamp came in, did a revamp of the old quests and zones actually need to take place to make that appealing to an already established player base? So again, looking at forums, the first post that I've taken is from Eldra. I'm sure I'll get flamed for this, but leveling is kind of fun again. Yes, one-shotting things was way quicker, but did not necessarily equal fun. You just immediately ran through the world and in the end it just felt like a race. Now I actually have to play my character, which is a welcome change. I have to strategize a few quests and actually learn my class. Once they iron out some of the bugs, adjust the dungeons here and there and the XP gained in dungeons, this new leveling system will be great. Oren for the win wrote, my biggest problem with questing right now is the vast majority of quests suck. You know it's true, all the go for quests, the collect this, the kill 10 of that, there's a really large base of that in WoW obviously. None of them are engaging, they're thoughtless, tedious and boring. What did 7.3.5 do to address this? Not a goddamn thing. In fact, it made it more tedious by making the same content longer to do. Then goes to talk about if they had more unique quest lines, he could get behind that process taking longer, but we don't, it's a copy and paste template. Then makes a really good point about if you are lucky, you get a single memorable quest per zone, and the one that I think everyone thinks of, because it's the one that I immediately thought of before I even actually got to where he says this, was the one where you get to punch Deathwing in the face riding a flying motorcycle. Now that quest was really cool. Is that something we need far more of in the leveling process to actually make leveling fun again, rather than just it being longer and possibly, you know, having to learn your class to combat things? Maybe we need more memorable quests to actually help with that leveling process engagement as well. Tyus also is loving the change road. I just had an experience with Yetimus, a 3-player quest boss in Hillsbred Foothills. I tried soloing in my hunter like 5 times with no success. I finally had to start asking for help again. I found an undead mage. We took turns aggroing. I would feign death, eat to heal back up, so on and so on. They had to really work as a team. So is this leveling change as well bringing back some of the actual MMO feels that WoW used to have in regards to you actually need to work as a team rather than doing everything solo in an MMO? Baneblood, who is hating life, said kill 10 of this, collect 10 of that. For 110 levels, soon to be 120 levels is fun. WoW has a ridiculously awful storyline now. WoW has the absolute worst leveling story and depth of any MMO. Any MMO out there is more enjoyable when it comes to leveling. WoW is all about endgame now and has been for a long time. It's by far worse now that the classes are in the dullest position they've been in well forever. So again, valid points there. The last post that I want to read out is from Sydien or Sydien or however I say it on Reddit. And this is actually a really good one. This is a really thought out post and it's got data to back it up. So, first, some background. I have leveled over 20 characters to level 100 with a full contingent of level 110s. I started playing in vanilla, but leveled all current level 2s in Cataclysm, wearing full heirlooms. I played an Orc Mage. I avoided all rested XP except for what you get from logging out. He then has his leveling path from 1 to 60. 1 to 60 took 19 hours, 45 minutes and 19 seconds. So we're going to call that 20 hours and he's got a chart up for how long his level breakdown took, and that's in the description if you want to look. While I have not tracked a time to 60 in several years, my most recent toon, which was leveled primarily through dungeons, is a level 65 Warlock with 25 hours playtime. This would track appropriately for my current data, with each level over 60 taking a little under an hour each. There is a noticeable spike in time to level at level 58, jumping from an average of 30 minutes to 45 minutes. Otherwise, the curve in time to level is smooth from 10 to 58, gradually increasing from 10 minutes to 30 minutes per level. It's my conclusion that the time to level to 60 has not changed. For everyone saying this is taking longer, this is a psychological difference. Dungeon running would usually get you 1.5 levels on the first run, with 75% of a level on repeated runs. For lower levels, this meant that you only ever saw a dungeon once, but as you passed level 40, you saw many more repeats of dungeons. Ultimately, the time invested was the same through the process, though the process came in large waves rather than a sustained flow. Additionally, leveling through questing requires a more active engagement than following around a tank and running the same old route through a dungeon. So too long didn't read, and it's bad luck because I just read it to you. Leveling in 7.3.5 has a negligible change in time to level, but significantly more freedom and variety. This isn't an observation on whether or not it should take that long to level, only that you are no worse off in 7.3.5 than you were in 7.3. So, from an open world perspective, the majority of forum hopping, stalking topics and things I've done, it seems as that the changes weren't as poorly received from an open world perspective as they were from the dungeon side of things. The dungeon side seems to be where the greatest gripe is, and don't get me wrong, there are certainly people that hate the open world changes too, and I could have read out hundreds of those posts. But they all range from the same thing. You know, I have to cast 3 or 4 things now to kill a mob instead of 1. My rotation is extremely boring, and the 2 buttons that I've got available to me, how is this engaging gameplay? The story isn't coherent enough, you know, which I would actually argue with this now, because now with the scaling world you can kind of actually have a coherent story because you're able to stay in one zone and level through that entire story without having to, perhaps if you did a dungeon whilst leveling, come out and then have to fly to another zone because due to heirlooms you've already passed that zone's sort of quest requirement for level, and you have to continually hop around the world, and then you have absolutely zero coherency in your story you're playing. You know, in an open world format, you will still level relatively quickly now. In the dungeon format, it is certainly slower in its current state if you used to level via dungeons. So I think the easiest way to fix this is obviously to boost the XP rewarded from dungeons. But I still think that, you know, questing should be the quickest way to level, because you are out playing the open world, you are playing the new content. And don't get me wrong, dungeons are going to be new content when you're leveling in them if that's the case, but I still don't think it should be on par with dealing with other players in the open world. I certainly think they can look at making dungeons more appetizing to run whilst leveling. As I said, the XP boost that you may get whilst when you finish them. So, you know, if you queue up and you finish a dungeon, maybe you get 15% extra XP for 30 minutes or something like that as a reward for finishing that dungeon. But questing ultimately still needs to be the quicker format. I think in some aspects this will add maybe a new respect back for leveling. I don't think it's going to have that much of an overhaul effect, but if we think back to vanilla days, it was a real achievement to get to level 60, guys. You know, like it was a real slog leveling all the way up, and then it was an achievement when you got max level, and then the game, you know, started in a whole new format from max level, and perhaps this is what Blizzard is trying to bring back for new players that are coming into the game. For already established players though that have done this, you know, I get it. It's not going to be fun for you. It's going to take longer, especially because you already know everything through the leveling experience and you know everything that you want to do at the max level side of things. However, requiring people to actually, you know, do quests with, you know, 3 people or ask for help or not be able to solo everything, does this make the game feel like an MMO again? You know, I still remember when I was questing having to ask higher levels to come and help me in vanilla, or if I'd find a horde player on the same quest, we would take it in turns to help one another, and that certainly makes the game feel like an MMO. We very much had a fast paced single player sort of vibe slowly creeping into WoW for a long time now, and I know that's because of time restraints. People don't have the time to look for groups, and Blizzard have certainly catered to that sort of let's call it, you know, aging demographic that's playing WoW now, where maybe they don't have as much time as they did in vanilla, and they're trying to make it more and more and more accessible to a wider audience. However, you know, do these changes bring back that adventurous feel that Warcraft used to have via leveling? I'll be honest, I don't think Blizzard can actually win no matter what they do here realistically. We have an extremely large community now that have sunk so much hours into this game. They have so much ownership over it, and there's always opinions for what the best thing to do is and what Blizzard shouldn't do. In my opinion, dungeons, as I said, could certainly use with that XP tweak. I'm not going to beat around that. They could definitely use with a larger reward for that bang for buck for that time sink, but I don't think they should be on par with questing. I also think Blizzard took on a massive project around scaling the world, and their view is they want you to be in the world. I don't think that's a real secret. They did all this work to make us be able to have coherent storylines and not have to sort of map hop as much. I think they want you to be out questing in the world rather than in an instance server doing ridiculous chain pulls. But that's just my opinion, guys. You know, and I could be very wrong. You could really disagree with me, but either way, I'd love you to leave it in the comments and let me know what you think. If you've been leveling and you've had different experiences with this, I would love you to let me know as well. It would be great to have a discussion around this. So thank you very much for checking out the video, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. See you guys.